there wasn't a point in my life where I didn't want to be a dancer. But what is interesting about my journey is like I didn't necessarily have access to, I kind of think, what is a traditional path to dance. We just didn't have the funds or resources for me to go to dance classes and things. So I think it's interesting that I ended up where I ended up because I don't feel like the path was laid out.
Welcome to the One Girl Revolution podcast. It's your girl, Kate, here. I am so excited to be back here for another week with another incredible story. I told you that we were bringing fire, F-I-R-E, in all caps, underlined, bolded, over the coming weeks and months, but I bet you didn't see this one coming. This one is a special one. On this week's episode of the One Girl Revolution podcast, we welcome Michele Byrd-McPhee, founder of Ladies of Hip Hop. Ladies of Hip Hop is a nonprofit organization that provides artistic opportunities for girls and women in hip hop culture. They do this through female-powered workshops, performances, public talks, and professional development training. Ladies of Hip Hop is educating and cultivating hip hop's next generation of female leaders. We also have a very short documentary about Michele and Ladies of Hip Hop made by one of our incredible interns, Cecily Larcher. So check it out on our social media, our website, and on YouTube. Michele and Ladies of Hip Hop are absolutely incredible, and I'm so excited to share this episode and this story with you and this incredible organization. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Michele.
Michele, welcome to the One Girl Revolution podcast.
Oh, hey, Kate. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to have you on. We've kind of gone back and forth. We've been working on different things with One Girl Revolution and everything that you're doing with Ladies of Hip Hop. But I wanted to have you on the podcast because I love this platform and this outlet where women can really just share their story in the way that they want. And I know that there's a lot that we want to talk about, but I'd love to just start with your own story before we get into Ladies of Hip Hop and all the great things that you have going on. Let's rewind for a second. Can you tell me a little bit about who you are and where you're from and just a little bit about your life?
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. So I think that I'd love to start with the idea that I danced my entire life with my family. Like I grew up with dance, entrenched in dance and music. And, I think there wasn't a point in my life where I didn't want to be a dancer. But what is interesting about my journey is like, I didn't necessarily have access to, I kind of think, what is a traditional path to dance. And so we just didn't have the funds or resources for me to go to dance classes and things. So I think, it's interesting that I ended up where I ended up because I don't feel like the path was laid out. And, but I feel like I knew it always kept calling me back at every point in my life. And so, I would say, I've always been a dancer. I've always made up dances and present them to my family at barbecues. And, my cousins, we'd all get together and like work on the new dances. And, so we'd always have shows and things. And then, I think in high school was again where I kind of found this like desire or outlet for wanting to dance. And I was part of this club called the Renaissance Club. And obviously in description, it really was a presentation of every art form. And it was in particular for Black students. And so during that, I had a chance to perform and I kind of still didn't know what I was doing. I saw Revelations which is the Ailey show on PBS. I don't know if people know what PBS is anymore, but I saw that and I just emulated the show. And got on stage and just danced my little heart out. And I swore at that point that I was like going to go to school, going to go to college for dance. And it's honestly not what ended up happening because I just discovered there's a process and there's these traditional steps that you have to have followed to be able to get into school for dance. And so I went to college at 24 and enrolled in a public health program. So I have my bachelor's is in public health. And I was a social worker for 5 years after I got out of school. And so I did welfare to work and I did women doing transitional housing. So transitioning from the shelter to what used to be called HUD housing. And then from there, I kind of like did a left turn, and because all along I, was dancing, and I discovered the club along with, growing up. And, the club to me was an extension of like how I danced with my family. So it was like that family that you look for once you're an adult and you move out, and all that kind of stuff. And so for me, street dance always reminded me of that, and was a safe space for that. And then I started to actually get called to do work, to do videos and things like that. And I was like, oh, it's still just a hobby. I gotta have this real job. But at some point I just I took a leap of faith and started my own all-female hip-hop company in Philly in the late 90s with a dancer called Crystal Frazier. And from there, it's kind of history. Like, I started running that company while still working full time. I started running that company, and that's when I discovered like nonprofit world, concert dance, all of these things that were just like foreign to me because this wasn't the world that I grew up in. And I just loved it. I loved running the company. I loved applying for grants, although I didn't even know what I was doing. I figured it out. And then I ended up going back to graduate school in my 40s for arts admin. So I have a master's in arts administration, but I don't have a degree in dance. And I'm making my career in life in dance. So there you go.
So you've lived so many different chapters of life, and I love the saying, you don't have to die to have many lives. And you're a great example of that. You've been through so much, working in social work and then running a company out of Philadelphia. How did the idea for Ladies of Hip Hop, the nonprofit organization, start? Was there a spark moment? How did you get that idea?
So, the club culture has always been a part of who I am. And I knew all of these women from the club who were so dope and doing like amazing stuff, but not teaching around the world as, hip hop and street dance culture was going around the world. And I had this all-female hip hop company that wasn't necessarily connected to the club in the way that I was, because this was the generation, I think, where street dance had started to appear in studios. And so a lot of them had only learned and studied in studios, right? And so I needed to connect those worlds, like these women who, I knew were really amazing, and then my dancers. And I just, started bringing my favorite dancers from New York to Philadelphia. And then I started getting calls, and, oh, I heard you're having, such and such down for a training. Can I come? And I realized, oh, well, this is a thing. So, we officially started in 2004, but I had long been bringing folks to come and train the women long before we officially started. And then, we got to year 5, and I just realized that there's so many, hip hop culture is not just one thing, right? It's very interdisciplinary. And I knew all of these women in street and club dance culture and in hip hop culture that were either visual artists, designers, dancers, filmmakers, DJs. And so for our 5th year, I decided to just like, I'm going to make it a festival, a multi-day thing. I'm going to bring all of these, amazing artists together. And that's kind of how it started, like really with this desire to just hang out with all the cool women that I knew. And then it just grew from there. So there wasn't any like big plan. And I still can't believe that 2024, next year, will be our 20-year anniversary. I never expected to be around this long and for it to be this big.
I love those stories where sometimes you just put one foot out in front of the other and like it becomes something. And it's probably good too, Michele, because if you knew how much work it would be, and I know that there are difficult days, and I know there are days where you're not sleeping or weeks where you're not sleeping because you're running from one thing to another, but it's kind of good that you didn't know how big it would become. And I think it's so important for all of us, everyone who's listening. We have ideas for things, or we see a need, and sometimes we get scared because we think about the bigger vision, but all you need to do sometimes is put one foot in front of the other and look at everything that you've accomplished in 20 years. It's amazing.
Agreed. You can start small, and just, if you have a real mission and vision for it, and I don't know how many times I had to literally sit down and read my mission. Is this aligned with the mission of, what Ladies of Hip Hop is? And it's kept me focused, and it's kept me motivated, and it's kept me like understanding a sense of purpose. And so, if you really believe in what you do, you never know what it can actually be.
Donate to One Girl Revolution's nonprofit organization to help us continue our work, highlighting inspiring women and girls that are changing the world through their lives, promoting their work and their organizations, and building a powerful and positive force out in the world dedicated to empowering women, their voices, and their stories. Donate at onegirlrevolution.com/donate. That's the number onegirlrevolution.com/donate.
So for people that are listening that aren't familiar with Ladies of Hip Hop, I know you do a lot of different things. You do the festival, you have different programming. What is Ladies of Hip Hop? And tell me more about what you do.
Yeah, so Ladies of Hip Hop originally started out, like I said, in Philly as, a weekend of dance training. We grew to a festival. And so within that festival, we spend a week with everyone within the culture. So there's dance workshops, there's performance showcases, there are panel discussions to talk about, dance, street dance as a profession. And then there's the battle, which is, one of our kind of big events that we do. And so that's the festival in itself. But the nonprofit also does additional programming. So we run a studio, which is also wasn't ever in the vision of anything that I thought I would be doing, but in partnership with Snipe, so a corporate sponsor who sponsors the studio space that we run. And within that, I have programming that offers other street dance companies free rehearsal space so that they can develop their work. Very often, especially now, we're being given residencies and they have things attached to it. But, here's a week-long residency and you need to come out and have a hour-long show. And very often what happens with street dance companies, because we haven't had access, because a lot of studio spaces aren't set up to serve our demographic. They don't we can't wear shoes, or, it's just too expensive, or whatever the limitations are. Our space exists, Ladies of Hip Hop space exists to support those artists. And so that they have, I think of it as the residency before the residency. So more time to develop and even think about what the work looks like. And so that the studio is there. And then in addition to that, we have a training program, because I do think, I always want to think about what's the future, who are going to be our future dancers. And so we have a training program that trains up and coming dancers in all the street style forms. And I think that's kind of all the things that we do. Besides, we do a lot of public speaking and things like that to support just sharing and passing on the message of the importance of women in street dance.
You're empowering women, which is so incredible through your work, but also building community. I think that we all need community more than ever in this world. And social media connects so many people. That's even how I found out about what you were doing, is just through social media. And that can connect people, but also we feel so disconnected from our everyday communities. And so what you're able to do, what you're doing through your work, is really connecting people and supporting people too. It's amazing.
I hope so. Yeah, that's what we try to do. Yeah, I think also just understanding that, hip hop and street dance forms have always existed in community. And so making sure that that's part of everything that we do, I think is really important. It's easy to kind of get away from that and, get on that hamster wheel where you're just driving and doing the work, which is also very, very important. But coming back to, I think, what it was rooted in, what it's grounded in, and making sure that we are checking in about that and checking in with our community, because not everyone's going to be on a stage, and not, so there's people who are just I love being in community. This is my part, this is where I love to show up. And so making sure that we're keeping in contact with them. And also because hip hop culture, the one interesting thing about it is that it can change in an instance, right? It's all these new dances that come up like this, right? And so I think it's one of those cultures that yes, it's steeped in history, and especially now we're celebrating the 50 years and all of that, and so there are movements and foundation and all of this stuff to know. But I think because it's grounded and based in youth culture and also urban culture, which also is always changing because it's always moving. I think that, we have to stay grounded in community, or you really don't know what's going on, and you have to make sure that you're checking in and keeping up with I know I'm getting old when you say keeping up with the kids are doing, but honestly, like you have to remain relevant, you have to stay connected to community.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I'm like, am I getting old? Because I'm like trying to keep up with the kids and like have a TikTok page and like or TikTok account. I don't even know if it's called, it's definitely not called a page, but showing my age. But no, it's incredible, and multi-generations, right? You're connecting so many different people and just, yeah, it's really incredible the work that you're doing through the festival, through so many different projects and programs that you have going on. So tell me about the Black Dancing Bodies Project. I know that's a big thing that you're working on.
Yeah, I mean, I think this project is very near and dear to me. I, as a person who is older in this culture, one thing I did notice, like women in this culture kind of disappear as we age anyway, but what's become very clear to me and apparent to me is that Black women tend to really disappear in this culture and often aren't credited for their contributions and, are marginalized within a marginalized community. So what I really originally started out to do is I just wanted to take a picture with all of the dope Black women that I knew in street and club dance styles. And so we got together, managed to get maybe about 15 to 20 people together. We take this picture, and what was very clear to me at the moment that it was happening was all of the talent and brilliance that was in that room. I said, wow, we got to create something, And so eventually I really sat down and thought about what it meant to do this work and why it was important to have kind of this safe space to celebrate Black women, but also to talk about all the things that as Black women, we don't talk about in with each other and in other spaces, right? And so just talking about colorism, right? with the things within Black culture that, are kind of, I would say, problematic or things that we need to work on, right? And even just discovering things about each other. Like I had women who are Haitian, right? Identify as Black women, but they have very different experiences, right? We played hand games as Black American girls, right? And so when we all got together, we're playing these hand games and noticed they didn't know these hand games because this is not something culturally they did, right? And there's other things too, when they're speaking patois, I don't necessarily understand that. So this idea that even though we do identify as Black women, we are not all the same. And so there was something that was really important about being in that space together and talking about colorism and how we exist and experience the world along that scale of tones of Blackness, right? And yeah, so it's been a very, very I think just fulfilling project. And we have a premiere of the performance work that kind of came out of and inspired by us being in conversation with each other. And that's in January. Works in Process has been supporting this work through residencies and through performances for the past 2 years. And we finally are getting to premiere in January at the APAP conference. The physical space is the Guggenheim, which also speaks volumes about, having people of color dance in that space and having street dance in that space. I think Works in Process is so ahead of the game and revolutionary in the way that they have been doing programs for many years. And so, yeah, it's really this powerful project that I'm very, very proud of. And I think, it's really about sharing all of these things that we have identified as Black women with everyone, and inviting you in as guests to this show and just sharing some of those hard things and great things, some of that joy, some of that trauma, just sharing what it's like to experience the world. And we have also women who, are dealing with how to deal with identity when you are biracial. Right. We have some women who are Black and Japanese, some women are Black and Jewish and but they identify as Black women and having to make choices, whether it's through, they have experienced, like, you know, trauma on all sides of it. And so like those things are hard to talk about, and especially in a Black space too, you know? And so it's just been, I can't even tell you, such a healing process and such an interesting process to learn more about all the different type of women we are in this space, and then to make sure that we are making our mark and sharing our contributions to street dance has really been a great project.
I cannot wait, and we will be following it and promoting the show and everything we can do to drive people to it, because it's so important for women to be empowered to share their stories. And even I love thinking about how people, sometimes we can't necessarily say or speak what our story is, but how we can use dance and music. And there's so many outlets, creative outlets like that, that maybe someone wasn't able to tell their story or talk about some of these struggles or identity issues, but they can do it through dance. And so it's really beautiful bringing women together.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you.
Well, Michele, this podcast is all about stories, obviously your own story, but I would love to hear a story or two of people that have been helped through the work of Ladies of Hip Hop. And that can look like a lot of different things. You know, maybe it's someone who was able to use the space, or someone who just got connected and your work changed their life. Is there a story or two that you could share about Ladies of Hip Hop?
Yeah, I won't share her name, but I have a very close friend in particular who I always say to her, you showed up and I never got rid of you. So she's a lifelong friend. And I think at the time she found us, I think somewhere online. MySpace was still kicking then, so it could have been MySpace. It's telling you I'm dating myself. But she came to one of those like pre-Ladies of Hip Hop trainings that I was bringing this really, who I consider to be one of the most powerful influences on me as a dancer. Her name is Marjorie Smart. We lost her to breast cancer very young, actually, but she is one of the reasons why we continue this work. But Marjorie was teaching in Philly, and this person's not even a dancer at all, but she came, she met Marjorie, she met me, she met a lot of the dancers. And honestly, I literally have not been able to get rid of her since. Like, she popped up out of nowhere. And the reason why I share her story is because she found us at a time where the reason she's originally from the Midwest, and her parents moved her to the Philadelphia area because she was in an abusive relationship. And it was a relationship that she was in from high school and followed her into college, and was extremely, extremely abusive, to the point where he was like locking her in closets for, you know, a certain period of the day if he wasn't around. I mean, just like one of the, you know, the stories that you hear and you think you don't know anybody. And because of that connection, because even from what her mom told me later, you know, she was crying to me and said, you know, you saved my daughter's life. And I don't know if she ever told you what was going on. And of course she told me, but I didn't, you know, like, we never talk about it. But, you know, she said, you saved my daughter's life, because if she had not have met y'all, I don't think we would have been able to get her out of that relationship, because she was still talking to him after they moved her across the country. And so in that way, I know that what we do as dancers and how we live in community can really, really change somebody's life and save somebody's life. And I think that's the story to me, and we are still like, I mean, like, honestly, we call each other sisters till this day, you know, and I hope she doesn't mind me sharing the story. But she's even told me, you know, herself, that you saved my life. And, you know, like, I'm so grateful to you, you know. And so, yeah, that's the power that you're talking about, the power of dance, the power of community. And she's, like I said, like 2 left feet. She's not even a dancer, but she loved us so much, and it introduced her to a whole new community she didn't even know about, and now that community is her life as well.
I love that story so much, and you know, people might think like, oh well, I can't dance, I don't know, I don't know anything about hip hop or whatever the thing is, but it's like, no, that community is so supportive, and just come, and you never know how dance could just change someone's life. And that community supporting your sisters is so important.
Yeah, you never know who you're going to meet. Like, step outside of what you think you can do or what you think you know or who you know, and just explore, like, because you never ever know. And it's the same way for me. There's people who, like, I'm doing things I never thought I would do, but it's also about, allowing myself to like to take in other communities and experience other communities that has kind of led me to where I am now.
Watch In Tandem on One Girl Revolution's website or on our YouTube page. In Tandem is the inspiring story of Caitlin Cullen and her restaurant in Milwaukee, The Tandem. The Tandem does more than just serve food. The Tandem is a family, a community of support for everyone. The Tandem hires people that often no one else will hire, gives them an opportunity, trains them, and helps them find their way in this world. The Tandem is a support system for everyone who walks through their doors. But when COVID hit in March 2020, the Tandem story became even more inspiring. The Tandem closed their doors to customers and began solely feeding people in need during a time when so many people were struggling. Caitlin and the Tandem community fed over 115,000 people during the first year of the pandemic. Absolutely incredible. Watch and share In Tandem today on our website at onegirlrevolution.com.
Where do you hope that Ladies of Hip Hop goes from here? I know that it's grown and evolved in so many different ways in the 20 years, ways you never expected. Where do you hope that it goes from here? And what impact do you hope that Ladies of Hip Hop can have on the world?
Oh, wow. Where do I hope it goes from here? I really feel like, I don't know if I wanted to get any bigger. That was actually never, ever a goal. And either, I think, we made it to 20 years, which was like major. This is major. And I just would love for us to be able to continue to exist, find some level of sustainability where we can offer, employment to dancers in the community, whether that's through administrative work and support or actually as performers. So I hope that we're impactful in that way, where we're contributing to the economics of dancers, and then, in terms of like, how do I hope that Ladies of Hip Hop changes the world? I feel like, or has an impact on the world. I feel like we kind of already have, in our existence in 20 years. And I want to go down in history as an organization and a person that helped move women forward in the culture, however that is, right? And so I think we've done that. So in that sense, I don't know that, I think just continuing on with our mission and vision is how we continue to have impact and how we continue to make history, or her story, as I like to say, continue to build international community. And I hope someone much younger than me takes this over at some point. So that's what we're looking for now. That's the goal right now.
You are impacting the world in so many different ways. And I love thinking about the ripple effect too, right? When somebody comes into your community and is supported by Ladies of Hip Hop, just how that can have a ripple effect. And I'm sure that there are stories and people that you've touched and the work of Ladies of Hip Hop has touched that you'll never know about, you'll never hear about. And that's the beautiful thing about what you're doing and so many of the other women that we highlight on this podcast. And so I can't wait to follow everything that you have going on and see where you go from here. What can people do to support the great work of Ladies of Hip Hop? What can they do to support you and get involved in the work you're doing?
Oh, yeah. Thanks for asking. I mean, to support us, you can definitely, right now we're doing a campaign 20 for 20. So we're trying to raise $20,000 for our 20-year anniversary so that we can have a little bit longer interaction with the artists that we bring in. Very often they fly in for 1 or 2 days and then they fly out, and we'd love to bring them in for at least a week for the festival so that they have more time to experience and sit in community with us and, like break bread together, the things that you kind of don't get to do when you have like these very compact events and festivals. And so with that in mind, we're just trying to raise a little bit more money for the coming festival. And you can go to our website, which is www.ladiesofhiphop.com /donate. And you can donate to that campaign 20 for 20. It's been going And we're going to have it going on throughout up into the festival. So if you want to support, that is the best way to support. You can also follow us at Ladies of Hip Hop on Instagram, and ladies is spelled LADIES of hip hop, all one word. So yeah, you can follow us on socials, check out our website, and if you're in New York or we're performing wherever you are, just buy some tickets and come out and see us.
I will be sure to put your website, all of your social media links in the show notes so people can easily get involved. We will, of course, promote your events, especially the one coming up in January. I hope that everybody who's listening, if you're anywhere near New York City, go, because that would just be amazing. Yeah. But I can't wait to continue to follow everything that you're doing and follow Ladies of Hip Hop and continue to promote everything that you're doing. Michele, before I let you go, we always end this podcast on 2 questions. So I'd like to ask you, the first one is, who is a one girl revolution in your life? You are a one girl revolution, changing the world through your life. I know there are so many one girl revolutions connected to Ladies of Hip Hop, but who is a woman or girl that inspires you?
That's such a great question. My one girl revolution, I feel like I'm going to be kind of cheesy and I'm going to go with my mom, although I have so many great women around me: Melanie George, the late great Marjorie Smart, Latasha Barnes, Reina Nunez. All of these people are like, I think, people who really pour into me and people that I respect so much for everything that they do on their own, but also on how they support me as women. But I have to go with my mom. I mean, she was my first example of, what it's like to be a woman who is just like, there's no ceiling. I know we always talk about this glass ceiling for women, and I think she just created her own path always. She was 28 with 4 kids. She took us basically from the projects to a house with a pool and all on her own. She had a salon for 33 years. She also had a clothing store along with that. And so, and she just done so many other things. That's just like a little snapshot. But to me, like, there was never ever, she didn't ask anyone permission to do anything. And this is before these like female empowerment movements and all of that kind of stuff. This was just her on her own doing, kind of what she always dreamed of doing. And I had her as an example. So therefore, for me, like, I always was like, okay, this doesn't exist. I'm just going to create it. I'm going to create the things that I want to do. I'm never going to dance for someone else's company. So I have to create my own company, and that I know 100% came from her. And she still inspires me running her own design business because she's a designer as well. She makes the costumes for our performances. That's my one girl revolution is mom, for sure.
I don't feel like moms get enough praise. And so I love that you brought up your mom. And I'm always excited when somebody brings up their mom on this podcast, because it's so important for us to give all glory to moms and the power of women and just how they've laid the path for us to chase our dreams and do all the things that we're doing. Before I let you go, Michele, I always end this podcast on one question. So I'd like to ask you, if you could leave women and girls around the world with one message, what would it be?
I think I whenever I do talks, I have this quote that I say, don't let where you are supposed to be determine where you go. I think I have, like you said, have done so many different things to lead to the path that, I wanted, but I had a high school counselor tell me, so what are we going to do with you, Michele? Because you are definitely not going to college. And I really wish that I knew who that person was. I could probably look in my yearbook, but I really wish I could get in contact with him and like tell him not only did I go to college and earn my master's degree and plan to go back and get my PhD, but I've taught in higher education. I've been a fellow and I've created my own path just because he couldn't see what I was going to do. And he determined me, they ended up recommending that I go to vocational school because I wasn't college material. And so, they told me where I was supposed to go, but I didn't let it determine where I went. And so I think it's really powerful because people say things that they just don't realize how much power are in words, but I feel like if you know that something is meant for you or that you love something, just keep working towards it. I'm not saying it's easy, and it might not be the straight and narrow. It might be curvy, bumpy, up and down. It's a roller coaster ride, and it might even flip upside down sometimes. But and I feel like every part of what I did on that journey has really fed into why I am the person that I am, and how I can show up in spaces and be my best self for the work that I do. Nothing that I did in my life do I regret, or I feel like it's not in use in what I do. And so, and it's also I'm just going to share my age, being 53. And I still feel like I'm like creating new opportunities for myself. So there's also, no, don't let your age determine again to what you feel like you have to do, because I'm getting too old and I have to do this and I have to do that. I'm still dancing. I'm still doing what I love. I think I'm finally getting to do what I love at this age. And so make no apologies for that, and continue to push through.
You don't have to die to have many lives, as they say. And I'm a firm believer that we're always becoming who we were created to be throughout our entire life, right? Until the moment that you die. And even after the fact, right? After you pass away, your legacy lives on through other people, through Ladies of Hip Hop will continue. And it's important for us to just be ever evolving and be excited about it and learn new things and try new things. And so I hope everybody who's listening follows Ladies of Hip Hop and gets involved in the great work that you're doing. Thank you so much, Michele, for being on the One Girl Revolution podcast. And thank you for all the incredible work that you do.
Oh, thank you so much, Kate, for having me. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this.
Please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at One Girl Revo. That's the number One Girl REVO. And you can find more information on One Girl Revolution at onegirlrevolution.com. That's the number onegirlrevolution.com.